It was a summer when my raging hormones were doing constant battle against my entrenched morality. I was a good boy with a head full of bad ideas. So, when my church camp rolled around, I had lost my earlier childhood passion for scripture verses and vespers and was more intently interested in swimming at the lake and eyeballing the fruitfulness of the blooming damsels. This year, the church had decided to draft 2 older teens to act as counselors for us young'uns. They were named Jack and Jill. Really. They were 3 years older, which made them both extraordinarily intimidating and elevated them to the status of Olympian gods. They were so cool. Everything they did was cool. So, one day, when they went up the hill together, not kidding, I decided to follow at a distance, careful not to be seen, to ascertain what such dynamic human specimens did in their free time. They must have walked for about 15 minutes before finding a very private clearing in the woods. Going over to a nearby maple tree, Jack laid down and Jill climbed on top of him, fully clothed, and then he rubbed his against hers to create theirs. I was shocked, befuddled, and completely titillated. It was like watching zoo animals, except they knew algebra. Trying not to stumble, I exited the scene, running back to camp to ask my friend, whose father was a doctor in Columbus and who seemed to know everything about everything, what exactly my eyes had beheld. With the calm and studious nature of a professor, he explained that Jack and Jill were humping. I was a little put off by the term, yet everything I came up with, for instance, rubbing and entangled, seemed no better. He said my particular viewing of humping was of the dry variety. I was enraged. I was engorged. I was torn between my envious nature over their pleasure and my biblical knowledge of the perils of fornication. So blending the two together, envy and disdain, I went to the pastor in charge of the camp and squealed on them. He promised that no one would ever find out that it was me, and a meeting was planned to dismiss the two from the camp due to their immorality. Sensing their ultimate betrayal, Jack and Jill went on the lam and Splitsville. I felt bad. 2 reasons. I realized that I hurt 2 people to make myself look good. And secondly, I couldn't get the humping vision out of my mind. Not because it was unpleasant, but because I secretly wished it was me. I learned a valuable lesson that year at church camp. It had very little to do with the law of Moses or the major doings of the minor prophets. I learned that it is my job to pay attention to concerns that pertain to me and to try to leave other people alone. After all, we humans are a jumbled mess of emotion, spirituality, mentality, and physical urges. To sit in judgment of one another sets up the scenario for our own comical fall from the throne of self-righteousness. Because when Jack goes up the hill and falls down, Jill often comes tumbling after. It's just the way we are. It's all because deep inside of us, we're trying to fetch that damn pail of water.